It was Christmas Eve in 2019, in a rich area of London called Battersea. Flamma Bakiri walked home with his family. The streets were bright with holiday lights. They were coming back from a nice evening out. Flamma held his wife Deborah's hand. Their 2-year-old son walked next to them. Everything seemed peaceful and happy. Then suddenly, gunshots broke the quiet night. In just seconds, the 36-year-old father fell down at his front door. He was hit by many bullets. His wife screamed loudly as she covered their small child with her body. She wanted to keep him safe from danger. Inside their home, the couple's 3-month-old baby and other family members heard everything. They were shocked and scared. A night that should have been full of joy became a night of horror. The person who shot Flamma ran away quickly into the dark. Flamma lay bleeding at his doorstep. His family was left in total shock. People living nearby heard the loud gunshots. One person said they heard 8 to 10 shots fired very fast. They ran outside to see what happened. One neighbor who was a nurse came to help Flamma. She pressed on his wounds to stop the bleeding. Deborah cried and begged for help. Everyone hoped he would survive. But just a few minutes later, before the ambulance came, Flamma Bakiri died. The Christmas lights kept shining on the street. Police tape now blocked the area. Detectives and medical workers arrived at the terrible crime scene. It looked like someone had killed a father and husband in front of his own family. Everyone wanted to know why. Who would do such a terrible thing on Christmas Eve? And who was Flamma Bakiri? Most people did not know Flamma Bakiri's name until that night. In news reports later, they said he was the brother of Mrs. Bakiri, a reality TV star. She was on a show called The Real Housewives of Cheshire. This family link to a famous person brought more attention from newspapers and TV. Pictures appeared showing Flamma smiling with his sister. There were also photos from his beautiful 2018 wedding to Deborah. The wedding happened by Lake Como in Italy. Everyone said Flamma was a good businessman and a caring family man. He was from Sweden and had Albanian family roots. He moved to the UK in 2016. He started a music company with offices in London and Stockholm. People knew him as a music producer and business owner. It seemed like he had left Sweden to build a better life. In London, he lived in a house worth £1.7 million. He appeared to have real success in his work. But under this normal-looking life, Flamma Bakiri was living 2 different lives. One was dark and hidden. The truth was that he was an important person in a big drug crime group. For more than 10 years, Flamma had been deep in the drug business. This started when he was in his early 20s. In Sweden, he and his close friends became powerful in a crime group based in Malmö. One of his best friends was Naif Adawi. This man was famous for stealing $7 million in cash from Denmark years before. It was one of the biggest robberies in Danish history. Together with a growing gang leader named Daniel Petrovsky, Flamma and Adawi built a huge drug business. They moved cocaine and cannabis across Europe. They washed their dirty money through fake businesses. Flamma's music company was one of these fake businesses. By the time they were in their mid-30s, they lived like rich people. But this kind of life comes with big risks and deadly enemies. By 2019, Flamma Bakiri's crime business had made rival gangsters angry. The main enemy was a young crime boss named Amir Mechi. He was only 24 years old, but ran a big drug network that worked across many countries. A serious fight started between the 2 groups. Both sides wanted revenge. Each side started hunting the other side's friends. This started a cycle of violence and payback. That year, back in Sweden, the fight became bloody and very personal. In August 2019, in the city of Malmö, Flamma's friend Naif Adawi walked out of his apartment building. He was with his partner, Dr. Caroline Hakim, and their newborn baby girl. Suddenly, gunmen started shooting in a drive-by attack. Bullets flew everywhere. Adawi ran for cover in panic. He even dropped his baby daughter by accident. Adawi survived the attack, but the gunman's bullet hit his partner. Carolyn Hakim was just 31 years old and a new mother. She was killed, right there on the sidewalk. Her baby lay on the ground nearby. The murder happened in the middle of the day and shocked everyone in Sweden. Police quickly linked it to people working with Amir Mechi. They believed it was a revenge attack. They wanted to hurt Adawi and his friends in the worst way. The brutal killing of an innocent woman made the gang war much worse. People close to Flammer now knew that no one connected to the Petrovsky-Adawi network was safe. It didn't matter where they were. Flammer Bakiri had moved to London by then. Maybe he thought being far from Sweden would keep him safe from the violence. But the same feud that killed his friend's partner was now coming for him. Police information later showed that Flammer had been marked for death by the rival gang sometime in 2019. This was likely after the Malmö shooting. Even though he tried to live quietly and focus on his family and business, he was a high-value target in an international crime war. His enemies were patient, professional, and very determined. In the fall of 2019, plans were made to kill Flammer in London. A group of hired killers was put together in Sweden. Their job was to carry out the organized hit. They were not random street criminals. They were a careful team that treated the murder like a military mission. The leader of the hit squad was a 24-year-old Swedish-Tunisian man named Anis Fuad Hemsi. He was an unusual person to be a contract killer. He used to be a professional kickboxer. He was fit, disciplined, and had no criminal record before this. But for the right amount of money, he became a killer for hire. Working with Hemsi were several other people. Each had a specific job in the plan. One was Estefan Pino Munizaga, who was 35 years old. He was also from Sweden and worked as the scout and helper. Two other Swedish men, Tobias Andersson and Barre Karaya, were also said to be involved. There were also rumors of a secret organizer controlling things from far away. As Christmas got closer, the hit team started making their moves. In November 2019, Estefan Pino Munizaga quietly flew into London for just 14 hours. In that short time, he did important preparation work. Using a fake name, Pino Munizaga rented an apartment in a modern building complex called Oyster Wharf. It was not far from Flammer's home. He also walked through Flammer's rich neighborhood to find the exact house and check the area. Before leaving London that day, he bought a simple but easy-to-spot ladies' bicycle at a local shop. This bike would later become a key part of the murder plan. It was a good escape vehicle that wouldn't make people suspicious like a car would. Weeks later, with everything ready, the hit squad came to do the killing. On December 20th, 2019, Anis Hemsi arrived in London. Using the rented Oyster Wharf apartment as a hideout, he began watching Flammer's movements and daily routine. He was careful and patient. In the days before Christmas, local people in Battersea would sometimes see a strange person around the quiet neighborhood streets near the Thames River. There was a man on a bicycle who seemed to be hanging around and watching houses. Sometimes this man looked like a city worker or street cleaner. He wore a bright yellow safety vest, dark work pants, heavy gloves, and strong boots. He carried a trash picker stick and a black garbage bag, like he was cleaning up litter. His face was hidden by a realistic latex mask, the kind used in movies. He also wore a woolly hat and sunglasses. To anyone just passing by, he might look like an older sanitation worker doing his job. But in reality, it was Hemsi in disguise. He was checking out Flammer Bakiri's home and the area around it. He studied the layout and watched for patterns of activity. The lady's bicycle with the basket, bought by Pino Munizaga, was his way to get around. He rode through the neighborhood, planning escape routes and timing his approach. For a while, the trick worked. Hemsey blended into the background of suburban London. He continued watching quietly until the time was right. He knew Flammer usually came home in the evening. This night would be no different. Maybe even more predictable because of the holiday. Flammer had no idea that a hitman was hiding in the shadows and watching him. He spent the evening of December 24th, 2019, having a Christmas celebration with his family. Later that night, a little before 9 p.m., Flammer and Deborah left a gathering. Maybe it was a dinner with friends or a holiday visit. They headed back to their home on Battersea Church Road. They were full of holiday happiness. Their toddler son was laughing as his mother carried him. Flammer was probably carrying gifts or pushing the stroller. As they came near their house, Flammer's thoughts might have been about putting the kids to bed and getting ready for Christmas morning. They turned onto their quiet street. It was lined with parked cars and townhouses. Only the soft sounds of holiday laughter and glasses clinking could be heard in the distance. It was at this moment, in the light from their porch, that Anis Hemsey made his move. He had positioned himself nearby, maybe behind a hedge or around a corner. Now he came out with deadly purpose. In his hand was a semi-automatic handgun. He raised the weapon and in a split second began pulling the trigger. A burst of gunfire broke the silent night. Later, ballistic tests would show he fired 10 shots in total. Caught completely off guard, Flammer was hit from behind. Bullets tore into his back before he could react or even turn to see who was attacking him. One after another, up to 8 rounds hit him. Flammer fell forward onto the stone steps of his home. He was badly wounded. Deborah, just a step ahead with their son in her arms, turned around at the sound of the shots. What she saw behind her was every wife's worst nightmare. Her husband was lying on the doorstep with blood pooling under him. A dark-clothed figure with a gun stood just a few yards away. She screamed. It was a raw, terrible scream that echoed down the street. She quickly crouched over her little boy to protect him. Her scream of terror was so loud and desperate that neighbors heard it from inside their houses. Hemsey, having emptied his gun's magazine in seconds, knew his job was done. He immediately ran away, sprinting down the street and disappearing around a corner. In the panic, he left behind no words, only the sharp smell of gunpowder and the bullet shells shining on the pavement. As the shooter ran away, neighbors began to react to the noise. One person who lived there, an older woman named Victoria, later said that at first she thought the gunfire might be Christmas fireworks, but then she heard Deborah's terrible cries. Victoria carefully stepped outside. What she saw was horrible. Her neighbor Flammer was lying face up in front of his doorway. Blood was everywhere. His wife was crying and begging for help. Victoria wasn't alone. Other people who lived there came out, worried by the noise. In the chaos, a young woman who was a trained nurse rushed to Flammer's side. She knelt in the sticky pool of blood and pressed her hands over his bleeding wounds. She tried to stop the bleeding. Flammer was still alive. His eyes were open, but fading as many people tried to comfort him and stop the bleeding. Deborah, holding her screaming child, begged for someone to save her husband. These were painful, frantic moments. The street that moments ago was peaceful and quiet was now filled with the blue lights of police cars arriving. People were frantically shouting and directing first responders to the victim. Paramedics reached Flammer and took over CPR and first aid. They worked against time, but the damage was too severe. Bullets had hit vital organs. Despite the desperate efforts, Flammer Bakiri died from his injuries there on the doorstep of his home. It was just minutes after being shot. A family's world had been destroyed in a blink, and a murder investigation was just beginning. From the very start, London's Metropolitan Police knew that this was not a normal murder. The precision of the killing, the fact that nothing was stolen, and the extreme risk the shooter took by attacking in front of many witnesses showed this was a professional hit. Detectives from the Met's Specialist Crime Command took charge. As forensic teams searched the driveway for shell casings and clues, other officers began going door to door for witnesses and surveillance footage. In a neighborhood like Battersea, they didn't have to look far. Security cameras are common, and many homes had smart doorbell cameras. Investigators soon found important footage from the days before the murder. Creepy images of a man on a bike wearing a latex mask and cleaning uniform riding through the streets. Another clip showed what looked like the same man, without the disguise, walking with a bike near the Thames after the shooting. Piece by piece, the police tracked the assassin's escape route. They figured out that after running away on foot right from the scene, the gunman likely reached a spot where he had hidden his getaway bicycle. Indeed, CCTV caught a figure believed to be Hemsey getting on a bicycle along the river path and riding off into the night. That trail led them to Oyster Wharf, the apartment building by the river. By checking records and security logs, they discovered that an apartment there had been rented out short-term, just weeks earlier. Further investigation, with help from Europol and Swedish authorities, showed the renter's fake name and connected it to Estefan Pino Munizaga. Suddenly, the case was pointing far beyond London. Within days, an international manhunt was started. The Metropolitan Police worked with Swedish police and Interpol as they identified the suspects who had already left the UK. It came out that Anis Hemsey, the suspected triggerman, had flown out of London just hours after shooting Flammer. In the early morning darkness of Christmas Day, while British families opened presents or slept after their celebrations, Hemsey was on a flight to Copenhagen, Denmark. From there, he left Europe entirely, going to Thailand to enjoy a vacation. Perhaps he thought he had earned it after completing a job. He may have believed that in the confusion of an international plot, he could avoid consequences, at least for a while. But the police net was closing in on him far more quickly than he expected. Back in London, as the new year 2020 began, police gathered enough evidence to officially identify and charge Anis Hemsey, Estefan Pino Munizaga, and several others while they were absent. European arrest warrants were issued. In January 2020, when Hemsey finally returned from Thailand to Europe, flying into Copenhagen once more, Danish authorities were waiting. British police had tipped them off. They arrested Hemsey at the airport. Not long afterward, Estefan Pino Munizaga was also found and arrested. Over the next few months, 2 more people who were said to help were arrested. Clifford Rolox, a 31-year-old from London, and Claude Isaac Castor, a 31-year-old Dutch national from the Caribbean island of St. Martin. Rolox and Castor were not part of the hit team themselves. Instead, they had been hired to clean up the evidence. Investigators discovered that on the night of the murder, after Hemsey ran away, Rolox and Castor entered the rented apartment to take away items that could be used as evidence. They got rid of the gun and other materials used in the operation. They hoped to erase any traces that could lead back to the hit squad. Their quick arrests showed that the police had figured out much of the plan. By mid-2020, the key players directly involved in Flammer Bekiri's murder were in custody. They were either in the UK or brought back to face British justice. Yet the question remained: who ordered this high-profile killing? The evidence strongly pointed to the feud with Amir Mechi's gang as the motive. Mechi himself, the young crime boss, had gone into hiding around the same time Flammer was killed. He likely knew that law enforcement and rival gangsters were after him. He was eventually captured in June 2020, not in Sweden, but in Dubai, during a global crackdown on organized crime. Mecci was later moved to Spain, where he faced charges related to his drug empire. Meanwhile, Swedish prosecutors went after Daniel Petrovsky, Naif Adawi, and their associates. This included a plot to get revenge for the murder of Caroline Hakim. It seems that the authorities on multiple fronts were taking the opportunity to take down both gangs, as they dealt with the fallout of the London hit. Flammer's case finally went to trial in London in early 2022. This was just over 2 years after his death. The courtroom was captivated as the prosecution explained the tale of international intrigue and gang rivalry. Jurors watched CCTV clips of Hemsey in his strange disguises, walking around Flammer's street. Witnesses, including neighbors like Jeremy Lyons and the nurse who tried to save Flammer, told the court what they saw and heard on that terrible night. For the first time, Flammer's family also heard in chilling detail how the murder had been planned. Justice Chima Grubb then handed down sentences meant to show the seriousness of the crime. Hemsey received life imprisonment with a minimum of 35 years to be served behind bars before any possibility of parole. Given his young age of 24 at conviction, this basically meant he would be an old man if he ever walked free. Pino Munizaga was sentenced to 15 years in prison for manslaughter, a lesser sentence. This recognized he hadn't pulled the trigger, but still long enough to punish his important role. He would have to serve at least 2/3 of that term. Clifford Rollox and Claude Castor each received 3-year prison terms for their part in covering up the crime. They were small parts in the machine, but the judge made clear that even side players in such a terrible crime would face consequences. And Mecci and his closest associates are also behind bars or facing trial. Tobias Anderson and Bare Karaya, they were cleared due to not enough evidence of their direct involvement. Flammer's murder showed how revenge from a distant feud could pierce the heart of a family halfway across the continent. It is a story of a man who lived on the edge between two lives, and how that edge finally gave way. If this story left you shocked and wanting to know more about real crime cases that shook the world, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to like this video if you found it eye-opening. Subscribe to Truth Unraveled for more shocking true crime documentaries. Hit the bell icon so you never miss our next investigation. Thank you for watching, and remember, the truth always finds its way to the light. Truth Unraveled, where every story reveals the truth.